I'm based in Gibraltar. But basically, I advise, most of my clients are international. So international blockchain and fintech companies that we advise. Most of them have some sort of a presence in Gibraltar, either because it's where they are regulated, or or for whatever reason they have their parent company structured through Gibraltar. So there are different reasons why Gibraltar is attractive to some of these companies. But the main one, I guess, over the last couple of years has been regulation. So the regulatory framework that we have in place has attracted a lot of the fintech companies and blockchain now into the jurisdiction.
Okay, I see. It would be good to know what Gibraltar is good for, because of course, I mean, all these small countries, Malta, Liechtenstein, Gibraltar, Switzerland, we're sort of competing with each other on the one hand, but on the other hand, I believe that it is always better if you can offer to your client not only one jurisdiction, but you say we also have partners in Gibraltar, Malta, in the US, and in other countries, and we could connect you with great people whom we know more or less personally, of course. Yeah.
I'm happy to sort of collaborate on anything, whether it's Gibraltar related or not. In Gibraltar, we had our regulatory framework now since January 2018. So a couple of years now. It's been very successful. It's Gibraltar's model was always about quality and not quantity of applicants. So we have 14 licensees now, 14 firms that have obtained licenses, and some of them are very established firms like eToro, Huobi, Bitso, Zappo. So there are some big names in there. But there are also some startups. There are also some smaller companies that have wanted to go down the regulated route, because it makes their company so much more investable. So they want to set up here and make sure that they're operating within a regulated environment from day one. The regulations here at the same standard as any credit institution or EMI or payment service provider in Europe. So the legislation that we created here is very, the legislation that we have in financial services is based on all EU directives. So we were part of the EU until recently, when the UK left. Gibraltar left with the UK. So that was part of the arrangement, because Gibraltar is was only seen as a member because of its affiliation to the UK. So the fact that now UK is leaving the EU means that, unfortunately, we are dragged out with the UK. But at the same time, that presents us with a lot of opportunities. So, for example, the main reason why now a lot of companies are, and by the way, it hasn't really affected our DLT regime, because the DLT regime that we had, although it was based around the principles of the EU directives around financial services, it was not EU derived, because there is no.
Because there are no. It's the same in Liechtenstein or Estonia. They are not passportable, so they're national. It means they can still be in Gibraltar. Nothing really changes. Yeah. Correct.
Except the difference between, and I'm not very familiar with the Liechtenstein model, but I'm quite familiar with the Estonia model, and the Gibraltar model is completely different. I mean, Gibraltar is real regulation, and like I said before, it's at the standard of any EU credit institution. So it really is, I see it as the gold standard. I've analyzed a lot of the regulations that exist around the world, and I see Gibraltar's model as the gold standard. I haven't seen any other model. Maybe the New York model is quite cumbersome. They have a bit license over there, and I would say that is the closest to the Gibraltar model, except the New York model is perhaps overly expensive and overly burdensome. I think the Gibraltar model works very well. I know that now in Asia there are other models, Singapore, Japan as well. So there are other regulatory regimes out there. But certainly for Europe, companies that want to be regulated at a high standard, have all chosen or many of them have chosen to explore Gibraltar. And another angle that now people are seeing Gibraltar for is the access into the UK market. So with Brexit and the fact that the UK are leaving the EU, there is a question mark over access to the UK market for the rest of Europe, and likewise, obviously, access for the UK to the European market. So one thing that Gibraltar government and the UK government have now agreed on is that access into the UK for Gibraltar will remain unrestricted. So we will always have access to the UK market, and that's why for us, I mean, a lot of our financial services and fintech firms that are based here looking at the UK as their main market. So that's really helped us, because obviously all these companies still see the value in staying here. So a lot of companies now, interestingly, we're getting a lot of companies from around the world setting up in Gibraltar as a hedge, so as a way into the UK market, a way to access the UK market. So that is one thing that we're seeing a lot of now. And of course, with DLT, we've sort of taken a lead on other jurisdictions, just because, like Liechtenstein, we're small, we're flexible, and we saw an opportunity a few years ago to exploit that. And it's worked well for us. It's worked well for us. So far, you know, it's been a successful couple of years in this industry. The industry is growing locally. More service providers are moving here. We have some companies here that are regulated, some that are not regulated, simply because their models fall outside of the scope. So yeah, it's been, I think, a very successful. It's very exciting for me because I was very involved in the whole process from day one. So it's good to see how it's grown over the last few years.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm interested in learning more about Liechtenstein and how it's going over there.
I believe that small countries, that they really have advantages compared to larger countries, because they can really adjust their regulation really fast. And and I believe that Gibraltar, Malta, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland has also introduced the DLT securities in lower draft. That they do a really great job for development of fintech and the blockchain industry. Altogether. I just had one tiny question regarding this DLT law of Gibraltar. Sorry, I really have to focus mainly on Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Though we advise a lot of international projects, we just refer them to the colleagues in our network. So this one is more like a license for crypto fiat.
Okay.
The DLT regime that you have, it is a question. Is it? Yeah, that is. Yeah,
yes.
Yes. Okay.
This is, so the DLT we have in place, the regulatory framework is applicable to exchanges or wallet service providers. So it's for custody. It's for custody, and also for transfer of assets belonging to customers. So if, for example, you are operating a business where you are transferring or storing crypto assets belonging to your customers, then that brings you within the scope.
Okay, I see. Do a lot of STOs take place in Gibraltar?
Some STOs. We have a similar, we have the prospectus regulations that are applicable here.
Yeah, it's applicable anyway.
Exactly. Our threshold for the exemption threshold in Gibraltar is 8 million euros.
Yeah, it's the same year. Yeah.
Okay. So, but otherwise, yes, we do have some. One of the main reasons why STOs choose Gibraltar is because, I guess, the tax-friendly regime. I mean, there's no VAT. There's only 10% payable on corporate tax, and no tax on anything that accrues and derives outside of Gibraltar. But one of the main reasons why they come here is because of the bank account facilities. There are banking solutions here
that is good to know.
For token sale projects. So
Okay, no, that sounds really good and also really interesting. You know, I think that one of the USPs that you mentioned is really interesting, that Gibraltar could be used in the future as entry point to UK market once UK will really leave EU. That is a pretty good point, I think.